about removing and installing a tire in this video today. So we have a tire here that we took off of Mazda, and when we took it off, we put a piece of tape on here to note the location. That is so we put the wheel in the same spot back on the vehicle afterwards. This vehicle has a tire pressure sensor, and one thing that you can do is reinstall the wheel in the same location so you don't have to reprogram the sensor. If I put this wheel in a different location after, we will have to reprogram the sensor. A couple things to note on the side of the tire here. This is a brand new tire, and you'll see that there's a red dot and a yellow dot. When they manufacture the tire, what they typically do is put a red dot where the heavy spot of the tire is, and they'll put a yellow dot typically on the light spot. In other words, the area that they like to suggest you may want to line up with the valve stem. Not all tires will have these dots, and not all will have both. Some may just have one dot. That's up to you as a tire technician to determine if you want to utilize those dots for lining the tire up. And that can save you from using excessive amounts of weights after. A few other things to note on this. This is an aluminum wheel. And before we get started, there's two things I like to do. First thing I like to do is go to the back side and see what kind of weights there are. So this one has a hammer-on weight on the outside and stick-on weights on the inside. So what I like to do is remove the weights at this point. So this right here is a hammer for installing weights, and it can also be used to remove weights. So I'm going to take the pointy end of this hammer and line it up with the slot in the back of the weight. Line it up in there, grasp it, and give her a little pull, and it comes off. And then we can take the old weight and send it for recycling. The stick-on weights, what you can do with those is use a putty knife or something to get in behind that, being very careful not to gouge or scratch up the wheel. Once I've removed all the weights, I will turn the tire around, back to the front. I will locate the valve stem, remove the cap. Once the cap is removed, I'll grab a valve core tool, insert the valve core tool, and unscrew the stem. And then once all the air is out, then I can proceed to the next step. So the next step here is to break the bead on the tire. So I have the tire set up on the tire machine and the valve core is removed. So what I need to do then is break this bead in multiple locations. I have to have the bead entirely broken on both the inside and the outside of the wheel. One thing to make note, because this vehicle has a tire pressure sensor, I want to make sure that when I break the bead, I don't accidentally damage the sensor. So I always recommend to have that tire pressure sensor at the 6, or in this case, the 12 o'clock position. So I have the hammer lined up. Make sure the hammer is in a position that it's not going to damage the wheel. If I have the hammer in a little bit, it can damage or scratch the wheel, which would be a very big problem. So once I have everything lined up, I'm ready to go. There's a foot pedal to control the hammer. I can hold it with one hand, push in, and it's going to use some air pressure to pull that hammer in and break the bead. What you'll find is it won't break the bead around the entire wheel. So once I let go, we'll get our shovel to come out. I will rotate the tire, and what I want to do here is then make sure that my tire pressure sensor remains approximately at that 6 o'clock position, and then I'll break the bead on this side. So that looks like that was successful. So what I want to do is make sure that the bead's broken all the way around. So what I can do is put the tire flat on the floor, and if I can push the bead by hand all the way around, the bead is broken. So what I'm feeling is this section right here isn't entirely broken. I can't quite push it down. So I'm going to break this section. There we go. Now we're broken all the way around the wheel. Now I need to repeat the process on the back side, but also keep in mind that tire pressure sensor. So I'm going to keep that at the 6 and 12 o'clock positions. one more on here. There we go. I'm confident that the bead's broken all the way around on both sides. The next step is to place the tire on the tire machine. These jaws can work in two ways. They can grab the inside of the wheel with these teeth and push outwards like they're expanded right now, or we can use the inside to grab the inner lip of the wheel. The outer edge is typically used on steel wheels. They can be used on aluminum, however, they could damage some aluminum wheels. So I have a foot pedal here that I'm going to push, and these jaws will move. I can grab the wheel assembly, place it on top, keep your hands and everything out of the way, push that pedal again, and it will grab the wheel. Now the wheel is firmly secured on there. What I want to do next is grab the arm from the tire machine. And what I want to do is place the arm as close to the edge of the wheel as I can without rubbing the wheel. Right about there is good. Underneath here we have a tire iron. So the tire iron can be used to double check your bead. So I'm going to insert the tire iron over the edge and pull the wheel up, or the tire up over that lip. And then I'm going to press the lever on the machine and spin the tire. As I spin the tire, the iron can come out, and what's going to happen is the tire will come up over the edge of the wheel, and then I'll continue to spin. And as of here, the tire is now free on that bead. One thing to make note of, when I started that, I made sure that the tire pressure sensor was approximately in this position, so it was out of the way of what I was working on. So what I'm going to do is continue to spin the wheel until the tire pressure sensor is back in this position, so when I do the bead on the opposite side, I don't have issues with that sensor either. Because again, I don't want to damage that sensor. So now the sensor is right here. I'm going to take the iron and the tire. I'm going to lift the tire on the opposite end of the arm, and what I want to do is get the bead on this side into the drop center of the wheel, insert the iron, and replicate very much the same process that I did on the other side. Right there, so have a good look inside here. And then I'll hit the pedal and spin the wheel off, or the tire off the wheel. At this point, I can remove the iron, tilt the tire to the side, pull the arm out of the way, and now the tire is free of the wheel. So here you can see the tire pressure sensor. Some tire pressure sensors like this one are mounted to the valve stem outwards in the wheel. Some of them are mounted in the center of the wheel and attached in the very drop center. Ford used to do this very commonly with a rim band. Another thing to make note of inside the wheel is always making sure that the rim itself, the edge, as well as the bead lock, this area here, is clean. If it's not clean, you can take a wire brush and clean that area up. All right, let's have a look at the wheel, or the tire rather. So on the tire, what we need to do is notice a few things. First of all, if you have a look at this one, it is noted as outside, which means this one's an asymmetrical tire. There's going to be an inside and an outside, so make sure it's mounted correctly. Additionally, some tires could be directional, and they may have an arrow on it. So always double check those items before installing the tire. The next thing that we need to do is lubricate the bead. So we have a couple different types of lube here. This one's a liquid lubricant. This one's a paste. It's sometimes referred to as a butter. And what we want to do is take that butter or that paste and rub the entire area of the bead on the tire. You want to be fairly generous with the lubricant. The more lubricant you have, the easier the install will go for you. What we don't want to do is make a mess of it. Anything that we get on the outside is going to dry on and be difficult to remove later on. So being neat, brush it on liberally, so on the inside as well as this outer edge of the bead. And make sure we do the same on the inside, and the inside is already complete. So then what I'm going to do is the opposite of what we did to take it off. Essentially, I'm going to place the tire on the side of the wheel. I'm going to bring the arm in, same location it was. And then what I'm going to do is take the wheel here, the tire, and have a look inside. And I'm going to hold the tire so that one end is over and one end is under the arm. Once I'm ready, I'm going to push down on the tire and then rotate the wheel. Just like that, the inside is on. And then I'm going to repeat the same process for the outside. One side over, one side under. Now this second bead can be a little tricky. The key here is with the lubricant, you'll see that the tire and the wheel will just spin. So what I need to do is, again, one over, one under, and I need to give it a little help by pushing it down. In the case of some low-profile tires that your machine may have difficulty with, in the case of this older machine, this tire is a little difficult for it. We have these arms that can assist. So these arms will push down on this end, much like you saw me trying to do earlier. So I can control this lever here, push down over here, and then I can focus on what I'm doing in this area, rotate the tire, and then the bead is now popped in place around the whole tire. The next step is to remove everything here and insert air. So I'll remove these arms out of the way. I'll move this arm out of the way. And then what I want to do is get a nice quick blast of air in. And then I'm going to push down on the lever. This lever has two stages. The first stage allows air to come out of here. And the second stage allows air to come out the bottom of the rim to help blow air up into the rim from the bottom. I like to put ear protection on at this stage because it does get very loud. The idea is we're going to seat both beads. They're both going to seat with a very loud pop or bang noise. We want to hear two pops. One pop will be one bead, the second pop will be the second bead. One. Two. So at this stage, I can have a look at the pressure right now, and it'll tell me how much pressure is inside the tire. Then what I can do is get the valve core and the valve core tool handy, and insert the valve core and the valve core tool. So by pushing that first stage, I can increase the pressure in the tire, and then if I'm quick, I can get the valve core in before I lose all of that pressure. And then tighten up the valve core. At this point, I can push the middle lever. That'll let the arms out, or in this case in, which will allow me to release the wheel. Then I can remove the wheel from the machine. Now what I would typically do is grab an air line and double check the tire pressure and use a proper gauge. In this case, I have a nice digital tire pressure gauge. So I can use the digital tire pressure gauge and double check the tire pressure, and then it's off to the balancer.